everyone. Welcome to Content Supply Live. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the .com bubble and then also hiring freezes. So we're going to react to a live video on the .com bubble for all of you who are not aware of what that is right now.
The .com bubble started around 1997, peaked in 2000, and ultimately burst by 2002. As the name suggests, the bubble revolved around speculative investments in internet companies. Simply put, investors were so excited about the progress of the internet that they invested in pretty much any tech company with a pulse. They stopped caring about whether or not a company was profitable, or at least could eventually become profitable. Common sense became a rarity. From 1997 to March 2000, prices went up about 5 times, only to go down 5 times and return to their pre-boom levels from 2000 to 2002. A drop which was also exacerbated by the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. Only 1 out of 2 internet companies survived, with businesses such as Pets.com going from a market capitalization of over $300 million to zero within just 268 days. There are, however, also success stories such as Amazon, which went from around $100 during the bubble peak all the way down to $7 after it burst, but then climbed back up to over $600 per share. The conclusion is simple. Like any other mania, the .com bubble is a fascinating human nature lesson.
That was good. I'm so glad they hired someone on Fiverr to make that animation 8 years ago with the most generic visuals. But no, I learned something there, right? Like we talked about this before, but like, I was born in the 80s. When I say 80s, I had like 3 months in the 80s. I was born in 89. But I feel like I grew up in with the rise of the internet. I remember dial-up those days. I remember when my dad purchased his first online product. And I remember the transition to Wi-Fi, internet speeds increasing, the .com bubble. I mean, I wasn't super old then. I was like 10, 11, 12, during those phases. But I do remember the evolution. So like that really leads us right to like the moment today that AI in 2025 is kind of like the .com experience where so many companies, the governments of the world are investing in AI at such a, like, if anything, a bigger scale. And that the saturation of the amount of like use cases of AI, like with all these open APIs, which means like it gives people access to customize AI tools to their own purposes. So it becomes very niche focused, which is great, right? A lot of people can step in and quickly create SaaS products, but all of a sudden it's going to be kind of like that .com boom where the like profitability or the market share is going to be so like spread thin that there's going to be a lot of companies that go the way of the dodo bird. I feel like I don't know the timeline on that, but I'm sure we're going to see some massive changes these next couple of years.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same. My biggest thing is I think about the difference. I mean, everybody and their dog, when websites started to be a thing, started putting together websites and seeing what they could sell online and .com. Just like everybody nowadays is just trying to make a Chat GPT wrapper, just cover it in a new shell, and then
that's a good way to describe it. I like that.
Yeah, I've heard it. I've seen it on LinkedIn a few times. That everybody's new like tech things is trying to rewrap whatever the behind the scenes driver is. So that's the hard thing, especially when you've seen tech work like that. It's funny when people are like, "Oh, you should try this new AI model or this new AI product," and like 9 times out of 10, I could have just done that with ChatGPT. I don't know, that's what I'm saying, or like Copilot. So the biggest thing to me, thinking long term, is just imagine people didn't have as much capital to invest. How many of these particular tools are nice to haves or need to haves, and how hard do you have to sell what you're doing? If you aren't a profitable company, I think it's gonna be really tough long term. I think you have some companies that will rise above, like, I don't know, Open AI is technically like I think they're bleeding money all the time. They're getting a lot more investment.
But they're an early mover though, right? Like
right. They're kind of shaping the industry as a whole, and they're generating revenue, right? They have subscribers to the platform itself. They're finding cheaper ways to make electricity to do these AI data scrubs, which are a ton of electricity every single ping. Every single question like lights up a data center. People don't really think about that, but it's a lot of electricity that goes into these. So they're very expensive. It just doesn't appear that way right now. So all this capital that's going into it, thinking about what's going to be profitable long term. If a business is set up to be profitable long term, it's not going to have a problem. But there are some that they're just trying to grab cash quickly, squeeze the most out of it, and get out, which I think it's a strategy. It's a dishonest strategy, but it's a strategy that I think is.
I don't think it's always dishonest, though.
Right.
In my opinion, like
it's interesting.
I think yeah, there's ethical questions for sure on the type of product and whether you're selling snake oil. I mean, I've seen it in the internet marketing game where,
for sure.
I think digital products or online courses have become such a like commodity. And a lot of people have struck it rich, especially when Facebook ads was a money printing machine.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think the get in out type approach can be good for a quick payday. If anything, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are like that they invest or they build something and within a few years they sell it and they had that intention from the onset. But yeah, I mean, of course there's always an ethics play. But that, that hits businesses big and small.
I guess it just kind of depends on the style. If you are one of those that likes to just get in and cash out really quickly, this AI thing might be a big deal, but I can see the writing on the wall for this to fall apart a little bit, because a lot of people are just using it as a buzzword. It's just a way to get venture capital. A lot of people will just say they're AI driven or an AI company just so they can get venture capital to invest in their business. They're not really a business. They're just trying to just generate money, kind of like a scam in my mind. So people who are actually generating and making something legit, it's not going to affect them if it pops, I think, if they've got their investments in the right place. But I don't know. What do you guys think, Kate, Justine?
Yeah, I was just reading up on some of the similarities between the .com boom and just AI in 25. A lot of similarities between like the hype and speculation around the internet in the early 2000s, and then the hype and speculation with AI now. Of course, I was just reading how in the early 2000s, everyone felt super optimistic about the internet, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel super optimistic about AI now. And that led to a lot of like overinvestment and unstable business models. And I can kind of see that happening now, where people maybe just want to jump on this train and, like you're saying, Brendan, like make a quick buck. But ultimately, I think you have to have a lot more strategy behind what you're doing for it to be successful. So I think it's really interesting to look back on history, especially with something that's related to the internet, and just see like what happened then versus what could happen in the future. And yeah, I think AI is a sexy word for a lot of people, but I think it can, I think it's interesting. It should be.
It's about
you open up a rabbit hole of when you say a sexy word for a lot of people, it's unfortunately becoming a cesspool for a lot of people as well, for sexy reasons.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's interesting how there's ethical concerns with the model itself, right? That I don't know. If you're serving a need that people have, then it's one thing. But I don't know. It's funny how it just feels like a buzzword 9 times out of 10 for businesses, rather than something that's actually going to solve a problem that somebody has a problem.
I think an incredible opportunity though is I mean, I've seen like it's a buzzword. Yet I think the more companies who focus on branding and community building and a loyal audience and fan base, where think of like, we'll say like Nike, for example, right? Or in fact, better yet, Apple. I like Apple better. I use Apple more, where they have such a avid fan base that a lot of their customers don't buy anywhere else, especially for their tech. And so naturally, like specific to that audience, that use case, that niche of an audience, as broad or narrow as it may be, I think there's a relevance for companies to take a focus and build a tool that's very specific to serving their audience and like you said, solving pain points and problems. And it may not be like the biggest like game changer money tool, or maybe you've rewrapped an existing AI tool and you just kind of adapt it to your own needs. You fed all your own company information into that tool for it to pull from that directory of information. But to me, like the very niche applications are very cool, in the sense that like, hey, if you may have a loyal audience of say, those 1,000 true fans who are willing to pay a small subscription fee, like that's still pretty good money for a small business. Or let's say your business that you have 100,000 true fans who are paying that SaaS product subscription. All of a sudden it can be a low cost added tool that has tremendous potential on like supporting your customer base. So I think I'm still more excited about AI than I am concerned. I guess I'll put it at that.
Yeah. And I was just going to add that I kind of like that AI has become like a part of so many different platforms, like Canva. They have like image fillers and background removers and stuff like within Canva, which is really nice because then you don't have to go like into Photoshop and do it yourself. So I kind of like that like AI has become like more like integrated into some of these platforms. I also noticed I just updated my phone a while ago. So now I have like Apple Intelligence in my phone. I don't know if any of you have like noticed that at all, but when I go to like respond to a text, like I'll get like automatic like text responses, and I think it's kind of weird because I'm like, I can respond to my own text, but also like, I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people like benefit from that in some way. I don't know. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what other companies come up with those very like niche AI driven like features within their platforms.
Yeah. It's interesting. It reminds me, the total tangent. I saw a video this week about they took the two voice models of AI and had them communicate together, like defaulted to like beeping or something like that. I don't know. It just made me think of that, like Apple Intelligence. If they're automatically preconceiving like, oh, respond this way. What if they're doing the same thing back and forth and it's just AI's just driving a conversation? Like it's just a weird thing to think about. It's kind of like that dead internet conversation we had a while ago, that maybe dead conversation sooner or later, that people aren't even having thoughts of how to communicate. They're just like fed an idea and they just keep it going. I don't know. That's a need people have, but I just think I don't know, odd to me to observe. But anyway, I'm off my old man soapbox.
Old man soapbox. Is that even possible?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the opportunities are huge, right? Like obviously, with any kind of product creation, marketing approach, the ethics are always a question. But yeah, like, hey, it's definitely going to burst in some way. It's going to get so saturated that all of a sudden, like, people are going to gravitate towards, their favorite simplified tools. I mean, you can even say I would say in a smaller form, I think like the streaming platforms, right? Like I'm a huge show watcher, movie watcher. I don't even know how many streaming platforms there are now to get your content. A lot of them are producing their own original content. And so eventually we just gravitate towards a select few because we're simple human beings who need, simple decision-making. And so if we're given too many options, we get overwhelmed and we don't decide. So I think the same thing with these AI tools and the AI boom is simplify it for us. Give us only a few choices.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's quickly hit on our next topic, hiring freezes in marketing in general. We've seen that a lot of universities, research-driven, have started hiring freezes, started laying off people in government jobs. So let's talk a little bit about like hiring freezes in marketing in general and why marketing is essential for businesses where like sometimes it seems that like marketing budgets might be the first to go.
I think this can go twofold types of conversation where we talk about the importance not only of marketing, but also there's a lot of really brilliant people that have been in kind of dead end government jobs that are now free. So I can see the potential of a lot of new businesses and ideas going to be cooked up and put out on the market from people who are just going to be in kind of a dead end, like ultra corporate bureaucrat job that they've got to get a little more creative, and they have that capability. I mean, a lot of people, they work for the government because it's safe, very, very safe thing, but it's not maybe as a whole they can provide their expertise in a way that could serve our society in so many ways. Like some of these agencies are doing valuable work, and I'm sure they're going to find a way to use their expertise to monetize it. So I'm thinking that like they can use, not only can they build products that eventually they'll need help to market those things, but also when you talk about like hiring freezes, many people try to offload as much creative work to like Fiverr and all these other platforms, or they try to use ChatGPT to try and do everything. And pretty soon you find that you get overwhelmed and then marketing dies. 9 times out of 10, a lot of people think like, oh, that's a cost center, I don't need it. Stop marketing your business, watch what happens. Most people, the second you stop doubling down on it, you're going to get buried. And bigger companies know that the second that budgets get tighter and when people are not buying as much, they dump money into marketing rather than pulling money out, because they know other people are spending less. So when other people are spending less, that means it's cheaper to get eyeballs on your stuff. Therefore, you ride the wave of down, then you're top of mind when everybody has money again, you're the top of mind, rather than all these other people that kind of lightened up. Granted, you have to be fiscally responsible, but I think a lot of people aren't considering the chance of, if you have to cut down budgets, freelance your former employee, go part-time, rather than just cutting them loose completely and just gutting your departments. I think that's a very unwise long-term, because it ends up probably costing more to let go of somebody full-time and then try and rehire that in a couple of years. Like you might just keep them on in a responsible way. That'd be my advice to that, having seen on multiple sides of the issue.
I have a unique angle on that. I agree with you on many levels. I used to work at corporate for Carnival Corporation, covered 10 cruise brands. I worked with 4. Princess Cruises was one of them. And Princess Cruises had a massive outbreak, COVID, on the Dawn Princess in Japan, which got terrible PR. And so that obviously trickled to the whole pandemic, which we don't like to talk about anymore because it's like in the past. But what that did is it created that hiring freeze, or a lot of people were furloughed or their pay was cut significantly, at all levels of management. And I think what that did, there's kind of a twofold thing, right? Where it's like they weren't making money. They're bleeding cash when there's no ships on the water sailing. And so it's a very tricky situation, in that case, but also it applies to many other companies where you're given the opportunity to, one, fire as many people as you can, and to like, quote, save, on budget, or 2, furlough them or cut, which means like you put them on pause, but they're still like on payroll in a way, but they don't get paid. Or like a 3 is you could just cut their pay significantly in half, but that they end up working more hours. What all those scenarios do is create a bad culture, and that people are not incentivized to stick around, or if they do stick around, they're like upset and they're not in a good mood, whether it's for weeks or months or years based on when that framework needs to be put in. So I think it's a unique take that, like, I feel like there's not a one size fits all. But a lot of times at the end of the day, like you've got to, you got to consider budget. You got to consider budget, and so even if you have to rehire in the future, like that's the case. But there's definitely we don't need to get into the politics of it, of recent trending news with the government cutting federal employees. That's a whole nother bag of worms. But yeah, no, like I think there's definitely considerations around like, how employees contribute to the actual value production of their organization, and as well with budget included or aside. So anyways, Kate, Justine, any hot takes?
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like these headlines are always really scary to read. Even if it's not affecting your company or your industry, it always just makes you kind of think twice about, okay, what would my options be if this happened to me? And I know Brendan has talked a lot about this, but it's super important as a marketer to always have multiple streams of income, or some sort of freelance thing going on the side, or something that you can rely on as a backup in case this happens. Because marketing can sometimes be an unpredictable industry. And like you were saying, Justine, sometimes they're the first out the door. when it comes to budget cuts. So,
which is unfortunate because like marketing is always needed, right? Whether you hire in-house or out of house, there's only those two options. And so how you evaluate the cost savings, is up to the employer. But yeah, it is, I agree though. It is like on the surface, that is one of the more easier departments to scale up and down.
It definitely is an interesting topic. And I agree, Kate. It's very scary. Like when you read like those headlines, because you're like, oh no, like, am I next? But yeah, having like multiple streams of income is always just so important. So if you do end up losing your job, you're not completely out of money. So anyways, but that is the end of today's episode. Everybody subscribe, rate, review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. We're everywhere now, LinkedIn. And we will join you next time. Bye.